Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast, part of the Bet Revers Network. We come to you as things get a little interesting here for the football Giants off last night's debacle. Bye week coming up, which means the general manager, who has been left standing, meets the media, and it was not a smart thing to do. It's something he has done in the past, so he had to do today. You can imagine he did it extremely reluctantly. He knew there was uh, going to be some tough questions. He knew he didn't have much of an argument to support his candidacy, his continued employment. And he obviously knew that there were going to be some Dable supporters out there who were going to be targeting him a little bit. Because let's be honest, and I've told you this before, uh, the head coach was not happy that he walked the plank and Shane didn't. He was very unhappy about it, as a matter of fact. Okay, listen, he thought they were a team. Everything he did was led to believe they were a team. So that's a fair, you know, response on his part to feel that way. And it's a legitimate question. Now, remember what plays into this, and it seems every time to be forgotten here. The Giants are going through extremely unusual circumstances. The person who has been in charge of all the football decisions is battling a health crisis, a severe health crisis. And that is primary objective number one for this organization, for ownership, and it's something they have to deal with every day. And they needed to have the general manager in place while this was going on. It does not mean the general manager is going to pick the next coach. It does not mean that at all. It doesn't even guarantee you that Shane will be back. Although I can tell you, I wouldn't bring him back. But I think the way this is going to unfold, I think there's a good chance he gets to come back because of unusual circumstances. Because you have to have decision makers and people to run things in your organization. And the bottom line is it's going to be it's just going to be something that might allow him to stay in place is the best way to put it. Okay. Um, Despite the fact he doesn't have a leg to stand on, and he did himself no good today. First of all, when you come out and the record is so overwhelmingly bad, the performance last night was so overwhelmingly bad that to come out and show any confidence in your ability to go forward looks ridiculous. It really does. It doesn't look defiant. It doesn't look confident. It looks ridiculous. Uh, why should you be allowed to go forward and make decisions and even be here? Well, I have great confidence in my staff. Oh, really? Why would you? Why would anybody? Why would anybody have any confidence in you? And why would anybody have any confidence in your staff? You can't win a game. You're presiding over a complete embarrassment for this once proud franchise, a continued embarrassment that began before you got here, which I understand. I'm not saying you started this, but you've done nothing to curb it. You haven't curbed it in any way. As a matter of fact, you've played into it. And now he has to stand there and rewrite Dart history when clearly everyone knows that Dable was the reason, the force, the driving force. And I've heard that from everybody in the organization. You can't take away the fact that Dable was the reason that Dart was drafted. To do that now is rewriting history. Now he's rewriting history because it's the only way his candidacy even makes any sense. Well, we were in on Dart anyway. No, you weren't. You weren't seriously in on Dart. You weren't even seriously in on Dart when they wanted to draft him. It's obvious. So he doesn't even look good on the one they got right. And today, um, all he kept saying was, "I understand the question." Well, that's great. I'm glad you understand the question. You're not answering it. Number one. Number two, I understand the question. I understand reality. Oh, you do? Well, the reality is that you've presided over a complete embarrassment, and you should really be gone. And under normal circumstances, you would already be out of the building. That's the facts. Now we can proceed from there, but those are the facts. And that's why there are times when no press conference is better than a press conference. And this one had the makings of a train wreck before it even started because he didn't have a leg to stand on. So when he goes up there, there's nothing he can say. Nothing looks good. Nothing is going to be reasoned. The fan base isn't buying any of it. The media is not buying any of it. And they all feel, hey, you found a way with circumstances being what they are and John's health being what it is. You found a way to stay in your job and to, throw one to the alligators so they didn't eat you. That's true. That's the truth. I mean, even when he was asked at the end and he got the heck out of Dodge, what if what if the head coach, which is a strange question anyway, because first of all, what head coach comes in and declares he's going to decide who the general manager is? That doesn't happen. You have to be a power. That has to be a Belichick or a Tomlin, and they're not coming. Okay, forget Belichick. The Giants don't have any interest in Belichick. They don't want to pay him. They don't want to give him control, and he's also going to be 75 years old in 2 years. I mean, they're not bringing him here. And he won 4 games at North Carolina this year. He's not coming. Right? Tomlin's not coming. First of all, the Steelers aren't firing Tomlin. Tomlin's going to be with the Steelers next year. And if he's not, anyone who knows anything in the NFL is going to be stunned because everyone who knows anything in the NFL thinks he's back next year. So you're not getting that kind of gravitas from your head coach. So the head coach isn't going to come in and say, "Oh, I'm going to decide the general manager." No, you're not. Nor would he want to. Nor would he expect to. But that doesn't mean that you know yet who's going to be the one who picks the head coach. So we'll have to see how that all unfolds, what the timetable is for such things, and everything else. And again, that will happen in due time. I don't think it will be quick. I think Giant fans are very impatient. They've been talking about it forever. When you go to the interim coach, you speed up the entire process to where the speculation, especially for a job as big as the Giants, you speed up the process to where every day is about the coach. If they waited till Black Monday to get rid of everybody, well, you're in January. You have dead periods. You have playoffs to deal with. The process can be slow. When you get rid of a guy with as many games left as Dable, and I understand why they got rid of Dable. They felt they had to. Okay. They were behavioral wise and everything else. I mean, they did. And this hasn't, let's be honest, it hasn't gone well for Kafka. And as I said to you for weeks, they didn't change defensive coordinators because they didn't have anybody in the room or in the building who deserved to be a defensive coordinator, as you saw last night. Their defense stunk last night. They were wide open. I mean, if you're gonna let the tight ends for New England run open all night, well, how much work have you done? You know what they do with the tight ends. How much work have you done if that's the case? And let's be honest, New England could have put up 50 last night if they were in the mood. They kept chucking downhill in the second half. They did nothing in the second half. If they had chucked downhill in the second half, they would have put up a 50 spot on the Giants easy and 500 yards of offense without blinking. So there was nothing accomplished there in what was one of the poorer Giant efforts, that you've had, by far one of the poorer Giant. And what you didn't like about that game was New England came out and physically punished the Giants in the first quarter. And while the Giants did respond to the hit on Dart, Theo, who's got to learn to hold onto the ball, responded. The Giant players responded. They protected their quarterback, which is, you expect that. It's admirable. You expect that. The Pats said they expected it. We all expected it. But when you come out and one team is laying the lumber to you the way New England was hitting them in the first quarter, it gets ugly. It gets ugly fast. The Giants had no response for that in the least. In the least. And they were pushed all over the building last night. And I haven't seen anything from the interim head coach, and I'm not trying to get on him. It's a tough spot, but I haven't seen anything that would make me even want to interview him. Okay, in the least. And if I had a say on Shane, he'd be gone. But these are not normal circumstances. And despite a train wreck of a press conference where he had no answers for legitimate questions, and he had no answers for targeted questions, and he got painted into some corners, and he had no answers for any of that. You knew he had no answers going in. He had no ammunition. His bag was empty. He had nothing in there. He's looking around. Wait, do I have anything in here I could throw back? No, I have nothing. I have nothing that I can throw. I can't even throw Dart back. So I have nothing to throw back here. I'm not going to make the same mistakes again is not exactly going to create a lot of confidence. I've made the mistakes. I'm not going to make them again. Why? Who says that? Where is that written? So ugly, ugly, ugly. We learned nothing about Carter. And let's go back, okay? And nobody is saying for a second that this guy isn't a talent. But clearly there was some behavioral things that have kind of been swept under the rug throughout the season. Because for that kid to get up and act like that, first of all, hey, when I go back now to the preseason, I don't even think I smacked him hard enough about LT. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if this clown was wearing LT's uniform? They would have run him out of town. If the Giants and LT had allowed such a thing, I mean, it would be sacrilegious. Hey, he's got to grow up. That's all. But it's a bad look. It's a really bad look, and it is an indictment. Just another indictment on top of indictment on top of indictment on top of mistake on top of embarrassment, and it's never ending. It's never ending. That's why you have to fumigate. Have to fumigate. And you have to be very, very careful bringing an assistant coach in here who you think is the next whoever, because I don't care who it is a gamble. You don't know. There's no way to know. As my old buddy Rick Majerus used to say to me, when you slide down that bench 18 inches, it's like you went around the world. When you move from the assistant to the head coach in basketball, just slide down that bench. He said, it's like you went around the world. And you just don't know who can handle it. And I always try to give you the most perfect assistants. Bill Arnsparger was one on defense. North Turner on offense. And they were terrible head coaches. Terrific coordinators, incredibly successful coordinators. The worst head coaches you could possibly be. You just don't know. So you could say, oh, I like this guy. I love this guy. This guy we've been targeting. Oh, this guy can't miss. It's not true. The Giants need someone with some gravitas. It's an unusual situation now, but I really believe they need to go in there and say 2 feet on the floor and eyes straight ahead in the meeting room. I mean, I think it's one of those deals. I really do. I think they need someone who's going to rock their world and make them understand that there has to be a accountability and some discipline to the franchise and to running a football team, because there's none of that. It has the substitute teachers have let the classroom get completely out of control. And I'm not saying the head coach didn't. What I'm saying is the classroom is completely out of control. Somebody's got to 2 feet on the ground, eyes straight ahead. All right, I'll get to the emails in a minute. Now, sign up for the Mike Francesa newsletter. You'll get content, contests, goodies, whatever. Remember, it's free. Go to the MikeFrancesAPodcast.com and sign up now. BetRivers players who place the same game parlay of at least $10 on NFL or NCAA football games will receive an entry into the weekly Squares game. Squares game adds to your excitement, gives you a little, you have a little fun. So winning Squares can earn up to $50 bonus bets per entry. See the BetRivers app or website for more details. All right. Let me get to the emails, see what's on your mind. Remember, send your emails to MikeFrancesAPodcast@gmail.com. Chris starts us off. Can you see Mike Tomlin coaching the Giants? I could, but I don't believe he's going to be available. I think he's staying in Pittsburgh. I don't care if the fans in Pittsburgh boo. They don't change coaches in Pittsburgh. I think he stays. I don't think he'll be available. Brian, why is Shedeur Sanders so popular? I don't know that he's popular as much as he is a curiosity. I think people root for him. I think people root against him. I believe it's because of the way he was nurtured at Colorado by his father, and also because he is Deion Sanders' kid. If his name was Smith, none of this would be going on. Nobody would care that he was a quarterback. Nobody would be looking at his year and saying, oh, the head coach is sabotaging him. He's taking this one out to dinner. He's not taking this one out to dinner. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. Wait, you're not dealing with Joe Namath here. You're not dealing with, Peyton Manning here, okay? He's a middling prospect. Now, I don't think they've put anything else, put middling prospects on the field, and he might be better than the other ones. But he's a middling prospect. He hasn't shown us anything either. But this whole thing has a life of its own because his name is Sanders. Wilson, why on earth would the Mets sign Devin Williams? Well, listen, there are a lot of people who like Devin Williams, who think he's one of the better relief pitchers in baseball. There are numbers that clearly back up that argument. Now, he had a very bad run with the Yankees, and then he had a good run after that. Uh, I disliked everything about him. Number one, I was angry that the Yankees changed their ways for him. I hated that. I told you that last year. I hated it. I wish they never did it. I'm sure they wish they never did it. Number two, he was no day of sunshine in the locker room. We all heard that. Okay, he was not Mr. Congeniality in the clubhouse. We know that. Is that important? Not if he gets outs, but you know what? He's getting paid a lot of money. Now, if you have Diaz and him, you know what? He might slot in and be good. If you're gonna ask him to carry the mail here in New York as your closer, I don't think it's gonna be a good thing. I think it's gonna be something that backfires on you. I did not like him with the Yankees. I did not want him in big spots. I did not like him in big spots. I did not trust him in big spots, and I hated watching him after the games. So I'm glad he's gone. 100% glad he's gone, and now he's the Mets' problem. He's not the Yankees' problem anymore, okay? Now, will he be a problem? Let's see. Now, is Diaz going to get signed? Well, if the Mets aren't smart enough to sign Diaz, and I would sign him, I'd go out of my way to sign him. The Yankees should sign him. I know I hear rumors about Toronto. I've heard the same rumors. Okay, they're out there. There's rumors about everybody these days. So what's the difference? I was wrong about Diaz. His first year here was so bad, I thought he would never live it down. He did live it down. And I grew to watch him and respect him. He's a legitimate big time closer with big time stuff, and he's durable for the most part. Nobody's 100% durable, but he's durable. You know what? If the Yankees have a chance to sign him, I'd sign him in a second. If the Mets can re-sign him, I'd sign him in a second. Uh, I have high regard for him. I've grown to have high regard for him. Tom, here's a strange one. Have you ever been to Disney or Universal Studios? The answer is yes to both. Now, I never went there as a kid to anything. You know, when I was young, there was only Disneyland in California. That was never happening. We didn't go on vacation. We never had and I'm not singing the blues, but we never had a family vacation ever. We never took a family vacation in my life. So no, we didn't have vacations. So we didn't have that kind of life. So we never took a family. There was no such thing. So was I ever there as a youngster? No. Was I there as an adult? Yes, I did take our kids. As a matter of fact, the kids loved it so much. We used to go with friends, and they loved it. They went before we went. So we went. We stayed at a brand new Four Seasons there, which was beautiful. Okay, not cheap, but beautiful. Um, the bottom line is the only thing about it is I'm just gonna be honest is unless you have some connections, and I don't expect the average person to have any connections at a place like that. The lines for the rides are really long, but the rides are great. I have to admit they're very imaginative. Um, what they were able to do with special effects and this is years ago. So now when I took my kids there the last time, they were probably 12 or 11. Okay, now they're in college. So I can imagine the technology that they have now, which must make the rides incredible. Um, Universal was always the favorite over Disney, but I can't tell you which has what now because they change and they add stuff. The big thing is they have to add stuff every year because people come back every year. A lot of people come back every year. Everybody goes there. The people love the place there. So yes, I was there, but now it's been a pretty good amount of years since we've been there. Joey, Peter Alonso said that they are waiting for teams to reach out. I think that's true. Why does it seem like there's no appeal for Pete Alonso? Number one, is age. Number two, right-handed slugging first basemen who are considered a liability defensively, and I think it's unfair for Pete. He does not miss games, and I think he's a better defensive player than he lets on. He does not have great range, but he scoops the ball. He can save errors. He makes the plays. I think Pete's an underrated player in terms of daily performance. He doesn't miss games, daily performance at the plate, daily performance in the field, but right-handed aging first basemen who are considered defensive liabilities are baseball executives run away from them. Run away from them. They prefer left-handers at the position for obvious reasons. And that's why he might not get the contract that he wants. I don't think the Mets will give it to him. I've thought all along the Mets wouldn't bring him back. Maybe they will now. I don't know. The Mets need to add power. Obviously, they need to add an outfielder to replace Nimmo. They obviously need to replace Alonso's power to go with Lindor and Soto. I really don't give a whole lot about Soto and Lindor's relationship as long as they both produce on the field. I really don't. And they need a DH because Soto is not ready to DH yet. Eventually, Soto will be the everyday DH. And he will spend the last 10 years of his career as a DH. But he's not ready to DH yet. Despite the fact he's not great in the field, he is not ready to be a DH yet. Joe, which defense would you prefer at the moment, the Texans or the Broncos? I think an excellent question. Excellent question. I think if you polled NFL people, the Texans would win slightly. I vote Texans. I like some things about now with Surtain back that makes Denver even better. But I like some things about Denver. But I also see some weaknesses in Denver that I don't see in Houston. I think Houston's the best defense. I think the Texans are the best defense in the league. And I think they're putting it together now. If they get enough offense, keep Stroud healthy, although I got to be honest, the backup played well. They have a good chance to make the playoffs. And their defense, I think, is number one. Carolyn. I've been a fan of the Vikings since 1969. You go back a ways. Watched them lose 4 Super Bowls. Yes, they did. Everyone talks about the Bills because they lost 4 in 4 years. And getting there 4 years in a row is one of the underrated achievements in sports history. It is really hard to get to a Super Bowl 4 years in a row. Yes, they lost them all. And after the first one, which they played a really good game in, the second one and the third one were disasters. And then the fourth one was a game they could have won. Minnesota came up against some really tough teams. They came up against some great defensive teams. They came up against some very physical teams and lost some tough games. They were a very good team. For the most part, they were losing low-scoring games. Now they, and their head coach has been considered a quarterback whisperer. They're trying to tell you now that we were very fair with our offer to Sam Darnold. They should never let Sam Darnold out of the building. They would have a completely different season this year with their defense and with their offensive weapons. If they had a quarterback, their whole thing is pilot error. They have no ability at the position. None. They put a kid in last week. Obviously, what did he do? Threw 4 picks, 1 for a pick 6. Nightmare. You can't whisper to guys who can't hit the broadside of a barn. And it is a complete mess, and it has ruined that team. And then you have guys like Jefferson who are walking out, who won't meet the media after they get 4 yards receiving. Hey, you bring those guys in, you nurture them, you pay them, you kiss their rear end, and you got to throw them the football. If you don't, you know what's coming. They don't show up for the press conference. I mean, that's just the way it is. He got 4 yards receiving. He doesn't want to be there. You know how those guys are. They're divas, but if you throw them the ball, they'll catch it. They've had no one to throw them the ball. Rod, are you starting to see anything that tells you Aaron Glenn can be a good head coach? Yes. Reluctantly, I say that because I see some things like his handling of the quarterback position, like his handling of game situations, like the end of the game the other day where he tried to give the game back again. That can be, but what I'm also seeing is I'm seeing a tightening of the screws on the offensive line. I'm seeing an efficiency in special teams. I'm seeing a mental toughness in games, a cut down on penalties. He clearly is in charge on the sideline. I think he has to make sure that his offensive coach, whether it's who they have now or whether they want to make some subtle changes, has got to have his hands on what's going on because I don't think Aaron is going to be a good quarterback guy. Now, a lot of good coaches, a lot of successful coaches are not good quarterback guys. They have bad opinions on quarterbacks. And, as Mike Holmgren told me many times, and he was really good with quarterbacks, and he learned from Bill Walsh. And he told me, he always told me this. He said, number one, we do a worse job scouting and evaluating the quarterback position by far than any other position on the field. And we do a terrible job in preparing and teaching the quarterbacks. Now, that's coming from a quarterback coach and a guy who was considered an offensive guru. And he's telling you how badly they mess up with quarterbacks. It is very easy for defensive-minded players, assistants, head coaches to mess up on quarterbacks. Parcells, one of the great coaches ever, picked runner over Sims at one point. It happens. They're not always right. Went down the road with Rick Myra for a little while until he couldn't stand it anymore. It happens. You can go down the line. That's what a great, winning, incredibly talented coach. The mess ups at quarterback are everywhere. They are frequent and they can be deadly. It's just the way it is. As Holmgren said, the hardest position to evaluate, the hardest position to prepare, the hardest position to teach. Doug, are you excited about the bowl season and the playoffs? The playoff can be good, although I think this year that Ohio State is. I'm very interested in the Indiana game to see if they can compete. I think right now Ohio State is 10 points better on a neutral field of any team in the country. That's how good their personnel is. They have an incredible defense and they have incredible wide receivers. They have a very cagey quarterback. They have incredible personnel. I think they're 10 points better than any team in the country on a neutral field, and that includes Indiana. I want to see if Cignetti can close that gap with Mendoza at quarterback this week. I am completely out of the bowl situation because you cannot watch the bowls. You cannot have a wager on the bowls. You don't know motivation. The coaching situations are often a disaster. And so many players don't even want to play and don't play. So when you got a game where 14 starters are sitting out, 14 guys are not suiting up. I mean, what are we doing? One team's 22-point favorite because the other team is sitting out all their players. It's ruined the regular bowls. So what we're left with is the playoff, which should be competitive, but I don't think it'll be competitive at the top. I think Ohio State will run to a national championship this year. We'll see you later.